Good evening and welcome to CBN4's Primetime News Package. I am Sheena Harry. Win Air, a government-owned regional airline based in St. Martin, has announced that the company has resumed direct flights to the Canefield Airport from St. Martin. President and CEO of Win Air, Michael Cleaver, said the airline has received many requests from both customers and the handler in Dominica, HHV Whitchurch, to re-establish the service to Canefield because of its proximity to the capital. 3 direct flights from St. Martin to Dominica and back will be provided in addition to the previously scheduled flights to the Douglas Charles Airport. In more news, a decision has been taken for government to acquire 44 acres of land in Bellevue-Chopin for the resettlement of Petite-Savane residents. Residents of Petite-Savane were evacuated following the passage of Tropical Storm Erica last year after the area significantly affected was deemed unsafe. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit says surveys were conducted over the past few weeks on lands belonging to private citizens in the Bellevue-Chopin area. Skerrit explained Cabinet took a decision this week to move to forcibly acquire those lands and to instruct the Commissioner of Lands to pursue negotiations with the landowners. According to the Prime Minister, the government will move with haste to place the infrastructure. Skerrit thanked the property owners for their willingness to dispose of these 44 acres of land. The police force is continuing its fight in the war against drugs on the island with yet another major drug bust. Police Public Relations Officer Sergeant Pelham John Baptist has the details.
3 individuals, all males, 1 from Point Michel and 2 from Roseau, are in police custody following a successful anti-drug operation at Tatan, which occurred about 6:15 p.m. on Tuesday, 5th January 2016. The Drug Squad section of the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force seized from a first location 22.6 kilograms of alleged cocaine with an approximate street value of $603,420 Eastern Caribbean dollars and 4.3 kilograms of alleged cannabis weed with an approximate street value of $9,400 Eastern Caribbean dollars.
John Baptist said at a second location, the police seized 1,589 grams of alleged cannabis weed with an approximate street value of $3,900 Eastern Caribbean dollars. Investigations are ongoing. In other stories, the Salisbury Enhancement Committee is pleading with residents to band together to help repair the road in the village. According to the committee, the road is in a state of disrepair, only worsened by the digging done by Public Works almost a year ago in an attempt to begin the restoration process. However, that project came to a complete halt. Committee members and volunteers will meet at the Salisbury playing field at 8 a.m. on Sunday to begin the work. Some donations have already been made, including a concrete mixer, a dump truck. However, much more is needed: labor, cement, tarish, wheelbarrows, buckets, shovels, pickaxe, and refreshments. No assistance will be turned away. Donations can be made by Friday by contacting any of the committee members. In more news, former Prime Minister Patrick John, whose 79th birthday is tomorrow, was flown out of Dominica today for a medical appointment in Martinique. CBN4 News can confirm that he was airlifted from the Canefield Airport via the air ambulance earlier en route to Martinique after authorities in Martinique communicated with authorities in Dominica. John was at the intensive care unit at the Princess Margaret Hospital up to yesterday, where he was said to be in stable condition. The former Prime Minister had been complaining of shortness of breath and returned to the hospital earlier this week. the government announced that they will take up the cost of John's medical expenses. Also in the news, many small businesses which suffered during Tropical Storm Erica have begun getting back on their feet thanks to the efforts of the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development. According to Honorable Rosalind Paul, it is taking approach in phases and subsequently will deal with estimated losses above $15,000. Focus was placed first on heavily impacted area. She listed Coolibistry, Collyho, and communities in the south. She said most of the communities in the south which were heavily struck estimated losses above $15,000. She notes that her ministry will ensure that small businesses make their contribution to national development. The Honorable Minister says that so far the feedback has been exceptional. According to Paul, the people have been appreciative and that support because it came just before Christmas. They were able to restock their shops. The minister assures business owners that those not yet addressed are not forgotten. She stated there are a number of new initiatives coming up to boost enterprise in Dominica. Chief Executive Officer of Dominica Air and Seaport Authority, Benoit Badwill, says that he welcomes a bespoke charter agreement with Caribbean Helicopters whereby the company will provide LIAT with charter flights into specific markets in the region. One of these specific markets is Dominica, utilizing the Canefield Airport. Beginning January 22nd, Caribbean Helicopters will operate new services into Dominica's Canefield Airport and also to Nevis on a daily basis.
This news means that there's going to be increased traffic between Antigua and Canefield Airport, which is good news for Canefield Airport. Although Caribbean Helicopters, it's a much smaller operation, given the type of aircraft that's going to be used. It's going to be a Chieftain PA-31 350 aircraft for Britain Nomanda BN2. And that will take something like 7 passengers. It is small, but it will mean another avenue by which persons wishing to get to Dominica can utilize. And in partnership with LIAT, which would mean that those persons would be afforded the opportunity on a daily basis to go from Antigua to Dominica.
All services will be able to accommodate 7 passengers and 1 piece of checked baggage. The permitted weight is no more than 50 pounds, which is the inclusive amount for both checked baggage and hand baggage. David Evans, LIAT's CEO, says they are pleased to be working with Caribbean Helicopters as this new arrangement allows them to extend their network, open up new markets, and offer more choices to customers. Evans added, it is also an example of how locally based airlines can come together to improve connectivity throughout the region. To wrap up the local stories for this evening, as the Calypso Monarch competition draws near and the tunes invade the airwaves, Calypsonians are taking advantage of every opportunity to gain exposure, present their material, and develop a fan base. At Stardom Tent, hosted by past king the Scrunter, the crowd responded well to Shadow Flow's motivational "Each One, Teach One," a departure from his usual rum and party tone.
But if each one can reach out and teach one, then we could become that beautiful land of a selfish hand. But when none, not willing to help none, only looking for self, none of us are gonna see that promised land. Oh, 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 ah, hey, 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 ah,
Performances by Brother White, Janae, and Jer Dorset were also well received. Next Wednesday, Stardom will present the Tug of War Battle Royale, and where singers will go head to head, sing song against song, with Hunter and Scrunter pitted against each other, refereed by Powell and Lady Star. Tonight, more Calypsonians will display their talents at Showdown Mass Camp at the Harlem Plaza. Performers include Dice, Buple, and The Bob. Organizers promise an even greater experience this year. Up next is Ali and Christopher with this evening's sports report.
The Primetime Sports starts now. First up is football. The two games which were scheduled to take place last evening at the Pori playing field in Port Michel had been postponed. The reason for postponement of both games was a lack of field preparation due to the inclement weather conditions for the past few days. No date has been given as to whether these games will play. Meantime, action continued this evening with the Mao Soccer Strikers coming up against Glanville Renegades at the Benjamin's Park in Portsmouth, while at the Pori playing field, the Kenfield Football Club will battle Element Agency's Early Stars. Both matches begin at 6 p.m. Once the outfield is prepared, the game at Point Michel should go on as planned. In more football news, the Dominica Football Association has agreed to give a well-deserved financial assistance to the former DFA president and former Prime Minister of Dominica, Patrick John, according to the current DFA boss, Glenn Etienne.
Well, here the DFA have decided to make a contribution to Mr. John, and I think it's a contribution that is well-deserved in the sense of football, because Mr. John, like we all know, was the one who channeled the cause of brothers to FIFA, and I believe Mr. John had done his share at the Dominica Football Association, and not just bringing us to FIFA. The goal project, one of the goal projects, the football house, was one of his under his watch. So I believe it was fair from the board to make a contribution to Mr. John, and I think all the board members supported it in terms of assisting him with a contribution.
Rumors, however, has surfaced in the public that the DFA was withdrawing its financial contributions towards the medical expenses of the former president of the association following the government's announcement of that they would take care of the bill of John's expense. But the current president stated that the DFA would still be making its contribution to the former boss of the association.
Make it publicly clear that that story is totally untrue. The DFA has made a decision to make a contribution to Mr. John.
Etienne did not disclose the sum of money which was given to the assistance of Patrick John.
Well, that I will not mention. Because although there was a pledge on the radio and we decided not to follow that line of pledging, we want to go personally to him and to his family and to his wife and families. We believe that may be the better way. And I support those who pledged on the radio. I did make my pledge personally, but in terms of the football landscape, we decided we will just make a private contribution to his wife and families.
And onto cricket, a drawn match was the inevitable result of a test in which only 150.1 overs were bowled due to wet weather between the West Indies and Australia. After 2 days of constant rain in Sydney, David Warner produced a torrent of runs on the 5th day to entertain the crowd, with the quickest test century ever recorded at the SCG. Warner's 82-ball 100 at least ensured there was good reason to watch the final day's play. Cricket Australia had thrown open the gates and declared free entry, and the local fans hoped they would see the Australians bat early in the day. Only 68 balls had been possible on day 2, and days 3 and 4 had been completely washed out, meaning that the only chance of a result would have been if the captains agreed to double declarations on the final day. West Indies began the morning at 7 for 248 and batted on, Danish Ramdin completing a second consecutive test half-century before they were dismissed for 330 on the stroke of lunch. Australia's first innings of the test began after lunch on day 5, with Warner and Joe Burns hoping to get whatever they could out of the day's batting. Another century open stand was a good result. Scores in the final test match: West Indies with their highest total of the series with 330. Craig Brathwaite getting 85, Carlos Brathwaite 69 and Dennis Ramdin 62. Australia made 176 for 2 declared. David Warner 122 not out, Joe Burns 26, Michelle Marsh 21 and Peter Neville 7 not out. The third and final test match ending in a draw with Australia winning the series 2-0. And the West Indies under-19 team departed the Caribbean yesterday afternoon for Bangladesh, where they will participate in the ICC Under-19 World Cup from January 22nd to February 14th. The team will play 2 warm-up matches before they open their account on January 28th against England. And media reports have claimed that Chris Gayle could be expelled from the ongoing Big Bash League if Cricket Australia's investigation into an alleged act of indecent exposure during last year's Cricket World Cup proved the indecent actually occurred. Following Chris Gayle's on-air flirtations with Channel 10 reporter Mel McLaughlin, Fairfax Media reported that a woman who requested anonymity had since claimed the West Indies batting star had indecently exposed himself to her in a dressing room at the Sydney Cricket Ground last February. The Australian woman said she entered the dressing room thinking it was empty, only to discover Gayle, who dropped his towel to partially expose his genitals while asking, "Are you looking for these?" Gayle's management group, Insignia Sports International, have rejected the claims. And that concludes the Primetime Sport Report for today. I am Alan Christopher saying good night.
Thank you, Alian, as always, for that report. And that's all for today's Primetime News. Once again, I am your presenter, Sheena Harry. On behalf of our entire staff, have a good evening.